Okay, I see that we are live right now. Okay, friends, hello. Today discussion will be held in English. And I'm thrilled actually because this is the first conversation in foreign language. But actually, frankly speaking, I have planned this kind of discussions for a long time and put it off also for a long time, many times, I would say. And before I present our guest of today, I want to say that one of the hottest regional destinations beside Ukraine, of course, remain to be the Republic of Moldova because of frozen conflicts and some political tensions over it. And today we will discuss some political perspective. Security trends with expert in international relations and former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, currently director of Moldovan think tanks IPRE, Julian Groza. Good afternoon. I'm very grateful that you have received my invitation. And
everyone.
Dear Yulan, I wanted to ask firstly about the Transnistria, of course, because we all read a lot of concerns over some kind of possible destabilizations in the region, and of course it have appeared more and more often after some shellings in Transnistria and other localities. What do you think about these provocations and what perspectives it could have in future, especially in the eve of 9 May?
Well, first of all, Moldova is indeed in a very difficult situation. The war is very close to us in Ukraine. And we all know that Ukrainian people, Ukrainian army today is very much a shield to Moldova, but also to all over the Europe. And most likely, I think Ukraine today fights for democracy in the whole world. You asked about Transnistria. Well, Moldova is not under conventional attack from Russia today, but Moldova has been under hybrid aggression of Russia for years. Let me remind you that in 1992, 30 years ago, in Transnistria, a war started, which was backed by Russia, which resulted a few months after into a peace between Moldova and Russia. And one of the commitments Russia took at that time was to withdraw their troops, their former Soviet 14th Army. Russia has not fulfilled their commitment. And with that, today, 12% of our territory remains occupied by illegal troops of Russia. And of course, that is an additional element of insecurity, in particular of time of war that Russia is conducting on Ukraine. And in these circumstances, of course, we all realize that in a war, there is war logic. There's tactics, strategies, visions, operations. And I totally realize and understand that sometimes signals of potential escalations in Transnistria are coming from Ukraine, from Ukrainian officials, from Ukrainian sources, sometimes from Russian sources. Recently, we have heard from the second commander-in-chief of the Russian chief of staff military, indicating that in the second phase of the war that they conduct on Ukraine, they aim to occupy Odessa, do the bridge to Transnistria. And one of the things he mentioned was that Russian-speaking citizens from Transnistrian region are their rights are being violated, which was to me a very strange statement. Take into account that the region is occupied by Russians, and you have a proxy regime there in the region, which has been for years under the influence of Russia. Anyways, now, of course, when you look at the provocations we had a few weeks ago, from my assessment that I have done myself, and I've reviewed and talked to various experts, and of course, there are various opinions about what happened there. The fact is that we don't know, in fact, because we don't have evidences at this stage. So for me, it will be difficult to provide an evidence-based opinion. So we were really on the grounds of speculations. But what I know for sure is that Transnistrian region, the kleptocrats, the leadership in the region, was very vocal from the first day of the war of Russia on Ukraine, saying very clearly that they are not a threat to anyone, and they want peace. And I can imagine that, and I understand that nobody wants war anywhere in the world. But the administration, the regime in the region, of course, they have a limitation, which is the Russian influence, their presence, not only the military presence, which is there legally, which is infiltrated basically in their security forces as well. So we have Russian FSB, GRU officers in those authorities. Russian officers are commanding or training paramilitary troops in Transnistrian region. We have seen a lot of exercises, joint exercises conducted by GOTR, the illegal staying group of Russian troops with the paramilitary troops in Transnistrian region. Recently, we have seen them more. Of course, the margin of maneuver between the status quo situation for the leadership in the region, status quo, which is quite beneficial to do business. And that's what we know, that the administration in the region is very much relying on the business, open or covered or shadow, whatever, but it is business. Sharif is very much the company which is doing a lot of activities there in the region, and they do that as well outside the country. And in that sense, we have seen, by the way, in the few days after the war started, we also seen the Sheriff football team calling for stopping the war, messages of anti-war, not very much in line with the narratives propagated by Kremlin and their propagandists. And I can realize that that element may be not totally in line with the instructions that Russian officers, whatever, working there in the region would have from Kremlin in the warlord logic, because what we had as a result of the day, we had more attention to the region. We have seen these provocations that attracted attention, both of Ukraine and from a war situation, of course, that is totally explainable, because what I see that with these provocations, Russia aimed is to distract, to disperse the focus and attention of Ukrainian army from the active war zone region in Donbass, to focus and to try to keep some more troops and forces in defense to the western part of Ukraine, bordering with Moldova and Transnistria region segment. And on top of it, of course, you have the attraction of the attention of Chisinau. Those provocations happened 1 week before. We were not sure we will get electricity contract prolongated because one of the main sellers of the electricity to Moldova is Moldavskaya Gres, the power plant generation plant in Transnistrian region. And on top of it, we had also the issue with the supply of gas, the contract with Gazprom. From month to month, we are being in a situation to wait for confirmations from Gazprom that they will supply the gas to us or not. So, of course, that brought a bit more attention internationally. It brought attention all over the world, in the region especially. Of course, nobody wants any escalation. But in fact, what we had, thanks God, we had no fatalities. We didn't have any severe destruction of infrastructure there. Or what we have seen some pictures of someone, whatever, some inventions that and some allegations, so trying to indicate that these provocations were done from Ukrainian territory. by drones. They found also some drones a week after that, indicating that that is the drone that the Ukrainian army tried to use and to destroy the radio communication antennas in Mayaki, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things which, of course, do not meet the how should I say? There are no proofs to that, but as a result, yeah, I think you also have on top of it, of course, these provocations raises concern in terms of potential destabilization, interest in the region, and escalation of those destabilizations towards the rest part of Moldova. And in that sense, I think all of us are very much focused on that. I think the authorities are also very much closely monitoring and trying to do whatever it takes to prevent, deter, and to send clear signals also to Moscow that any potential escalation would raise costs, not only to the army in fighting with the Ukrainian military, but also to Russia internationally. Those costs which Russia now suffers, I think they will be multiplied. So that is important for the aggressor to understand that any escalation is not something which will have to take place.
Actually, you have mentioned several times that Moldova has no proofs about that situation, but nevertheless, President of your country, Ms. Sandu, has stated that, on your opinion, situation in Transnistria was caused by a confrontation of internal groups. What does it mean, and who are they, these groups? What do you think about this statement?
Well, for me, it's very difficult to expand and to comment the statement of the president. I'm sure she had evidences to indicate to that conclusion and to make that statement. What I can say from my side, what I understand from that, we definitely see that in the region there is a very heavy presence of Russia. Not only, I said, in troops, but also in Secret Service and FSB, GRU, who have been not only working in the authorities there, but they're doing business. They were doing business in status quo situation, working with their proxies there. On the other hand, we know that Krasnosersky was not the proxy which was very much openly welcomed by Kremlin for some times. And we also understand that the leader of the region is very much using the economic power of the group that is supporting him to win support, local support, and so on and so forth. So I would see there at least two interests that may conflicting at this stage, because nor the economic nor the political local kleptocrats are of course not interested in any attraction, getting involvement of the region in the conflict and in the war, primarily because that will affect, of course, the life of citizens of the residents, but not less important, the business. Really much more difficult to do the business there. And you have other groups which are there, of course, the opponents of the current leadership, who may be actually backed up by the Russians.
While I was preparing to our conversation, I came across one interesting post on Facebook. If am I right, Kirill Motspan, former deputy, it was written by him, and he wrote that in this situation, the one option for Moldova is to call Ukraine to help in military way to resolve Transnistrian problem. Do you believe, and actually, frankly speaking, I have heard about some kind of these scenarios both on Moldovan TV and Ukrainian TV, and it is pretty high level of discussion around it. And do you believe, would it be an option in this case? And if not, why? If yes, why? Because it's some kind of challenge for both countries right now, because from the one point of view, this is really their window of opportunity for Moldova, the war in Ukraine. And from the second point of view, this is highly
we can talk. I wouldn't say, Mariana, that we can talk about opportunities here when we talk about the war and tragedies and atrocities which are taking place. I'm not sure anyone wants to benefit from it, and I'm not sure that we need to talk in the terms of opportunities here. If you want to,
it's opportunity to make our common risks weaker and not so visible for all our entire security architecture for all countries. I mean,
as I said, Moldova is under hybrid aggression from Russia for years. 1992, it all started. Ukraine, Russia, OSCE, EU, US are part of the negotiation format in the conflict, the settlement process for years. And we all know that Ukraine not always had a very consistent position and supportive position towards speeding up the process.
Yes.
Especially in the first years in the early 90s. Later, of course, we had very much consolidated our cooperation also in the framework of the EU and the UBAM, for example, mission. And before that, others, and recently, of course. So I think there is a lot of room where Ukraine and Moldova and other partners who are indeed willing to solve the conflict, to contribute to solve the conflict peacefully, because we don't have any how should I say conflictual elements there. In terms of, I don't know, ethnic grounds, this conflict is purely geopolitical one. This conflict was created in 1992 to keep Moldova hostage as much as Russia wanted. And I think Ukraine, Moldova, and all other partners we have, they have to put more effort in advancing the settlement of this conflict peacefully. But right now, I think Ukraine has much more need to focus all the efforts of the defense capabilities and the army and people really to resist and to fight the aggression of Russia in the active zone of the war today. And that is important. And we also see that the all international community and partners are making sure that to increase the capabilities and defense capabilities of Ukraine like never before. And I think all understands how important it is for Ukraine to not only to resist, but to discourage and deter any further aggression and stop the war from Russia. So I think I would try to go into, I mean, to have that perspective into a discussion, more common sense approach than looking into any other kind of scenarios which would not be helpful or peaceful for anyone.
But we have there is no longer peaceful agenda in our region. Does Moldova have some? Does Moldova consider some scenarios in order to prevent some kind of invention of Transnistrian troops in Ukraine or even toward Chisinau? Because your Moldovan military experts really expressed some kind of concerns about this kind of threats, especially these days.
Well, I think Moldovan authorities and the international community has to do whatever it takes to prevent, discourage, deter, and raise costs of any even alleged intention of a conventional aggression or escalation from Russian army here in Moldova. I think that is the primarily goal that should be preoccupying the administration, the leadership in Moldova and our partners. Second, I think we have to be also, well, I don't want to be, I should say, underestimating the threats of military attacks from Transnistrian region towards Ukraine, or trying to escalate that towards the rest part of Moldova. Of course, but I'm not sure that there is also enough capabilities and intent for the Russian troops there and to get engaged into another front of confrontation and facing the very prepared, very empowered and very morally strong army of Ukraine. That would give additional losses, more losses. I told you, I mean, it's not only about the costs that Russia would bear, but also more losses on indirect combat of this war. Then in the region, I'm not sure we have, I mean, I'm not a military expert, so maybe the military experts know better, but from what I understand, the equipment which is there, it's not only, it's not necessarily the best one. Many of the equipment they have there, military equipment, needs repair. I'm not sure they have equipment for active attack, efficient attack operations. Definitely not enough to do an attack on Ukraine from this part. In terms of Moldova, well, we have an army. Yes, our defense and security capabilities are very fragile. And that is also a result of policies of various governments in Moldova since the war ended in 1992, when you have a budget component of the defense of 0.03%. And we all understand that we need to invest more in defense capabilities. We all understand we need to invest more in security of Moldova. But with all that, we still have an army and we have police. Police was the one that fought in 1992 with Russians in Transnistrian region. So it's not only the military troops, we also have police troops, all the authorities, the law enforcement and security and power, armed forces of Moldova, I'm sure they have enough capabilities to defend and to prevent any potential attacks. For that, of course, I'm sure that the authorities have analyzed and have looked for various scenarios. And of course, these types of scenarios are there as well. And I'm confident that there are plans also for this type of things. But of course, all of us would not want to see any type of escalation. I think the effort of Moldovan authorities, of international partners, is very much to be focused on preventing, on deterring and discouraging any potential attempts. Sending very clear signals, not only by us, but by international partners, that would raise even more costs on Russia. And I think that is what I think it's important to leave it with you from my side.
Yesterday, European Parliament has expressed significantly important expressed support toward Moldova by historical wording of agreeing formal membership of Republic of Moldova in the European Union. How do you estimate these signs of European community? Does it increase somehow confidence of Moldovan authorities in the future, especially in these challenging times?
Well, indeed, what we had yesterday, the European Parliament adopted a resolution calling for European perspective and providing Moldova candidate status. It's, I think it's the first official document of an EU institution expressly calling for this type of position that we, together with Ukraine and Georgia, were calling for years. We know that the European Parliament was also always very supportive for Moldovan and Ukrainian European aspirations. We have seen many resolutions in that sense. And I think what it is important, especially in the context of the screening that the Commission is conducting, screening of the potential candidate status for Ukraine, Moldova, I think this type of messages from political institutions of the European Union are very important. And they send clear signals, not only to authorities, you mentioned authorities. I think it is the clear signal to Moldovan citizens, because we have a majority of population of citizens who very much are looking for Moldova to join the European Union, just like Ukraine. And we have been engaged in this process for years, especially in the last almost 8 years. And I think the fact that Moldova had an association agreement with the European Union, and this CFTA also proved to be very useful in times of crisis, in times of war, when our trade is very much connected with the European Union market, which helps to diminish the impact of the suspension of imports and exports with Ukraine, with other countries in the East. So I think this was very useful. Also, you can look into that in the Transnistrian region as well, because 70% of the trade from the Transnistrian region is directed towards the European Union. I think that is another leverage element that makes the local leadership to think twice in these very difficult situations, in making choices. So yeah, I think this was an important signal to Moldova, an expected signal. Moldova is a European country. We declared that many governments since 2005 in particular declared that European integration is our #1 priority, foreign and internal policy. And I think, we have a lot of work to do towards becoming members of the European Union. But I think now what is important is to make sure that the European Council, the member states, hear the messages calling from Moldova, from Ukraine, from European Parliament, and other actors for providing our country's clear membership perspective. I think that is important because that would provide even more predictability in our transformation and reforms and process, but also will provide additional security that we all need now.
Another one very important topic, it's about propaganda and disinformation. And we know that it is usually, this activity is usually conducted when we talk about Moldova from the side of pro-Russian organization and pro-Russian parties. And we all know these names. They remain very famous. And my question is that how do you believe it could be combated? How can we resist toward these informational risks? Because, for example, if even when we talk about refugees from Ukraine is very grateful for that help that Moldova provided and continues to provide. But nevertheless, Ukrainian people, not only in Moldova, but also in the United States, one of the main targets of Russian propaganda, and including Moldova. So how can we protect ourselves from informational risks, from informational threats, in order to diminish this escalation in these times?
Well, definitely we need to do much more to secure our information space. I think Ukraine has been more effective over years and managed to improve the security of the information space. And limiting the activity of propaganda and disinformation conducted by Kremlin for years. Moldova, I think now more and more people and politicians in Moldova realize that more attention to this should be given, and not only attention, but concrete actions. As we speak, the Moldovan parliament is looking into amendments into the legislation to provide more tools and instruments for the Audiovisual Council to fight effectively with propaganda and disinformation. There are also a lot of discussions about other measures that can be and should be applied in order to deter and to sanction not websites, but persons behind social media and websites for this type of activities of spreading disinformation, spreading calls for war, and spreading all that, which of course is a clear security risk for Moldova. I mentioned at the very beginning that Moldova was under hybrid aggression from Russia for years. And I told you about the fact that our territory is occupied, 12% of our territory is occupied by the Russian troops, which adds up on the insecurities. But also our population has been targeted for years in terms of disinformation activities from not only media, because if you talk about media, audiovisual media, about 75% of the media in Moldova is owned by Russian proxies. Private media, I mean, right? Yeah. Until recently, last year, I think one of the biggest investors in the first channel of Moldova, which is retransmitting the first channel of Russia, was Chaika, the son of the former prosecutor general of Russian Federation, now an oligarch who did business with Dodon family.
And the friend of Mr. Dodon, yeah.
Not a friend, but a business partner of his family, doing business also in Transnistrian region and in other places in the world. And this, I mean, he withdrew from the shareholder as a shareholder from that company, but still we see that unfortunately this type of media organizations now they, even though in a shy way, but they still try to spread misinformation, manipulation. Yes, they stopped to rebroadcast news from Russia television or political talk shows, propagandistic ones, but they have their own here, which is very much, recently we have seen a lot of manipulations and in a way, threats of provocations, including in the context of the 9th of May commemoration of the losses of people during the Second World War. Which they want to celebrate as a victory. Well, we all understand that, and we have to bear the mind and the memory for all those who fought in the Second World War. But personally, I don't think that in times of war, we need to celebrate war, especially if these celebrations are very much propagating Russians' aggression symbols of war. So I think our solidarity with Ukraine should they go, of course, beyond the support that we can provide to Ukrainian fellows that are coming to Moldova to seek shelter and to seek refugee, or other type of support that Moldova is providing to Ukraine. But also, I think it's very important to prevent and to discourage this type of activities through media or through other proxies of Russia, which unfortunately are active. Because, yeah, it happens that in Moldova we have about 30% of Russian-speaking communities, which unfortunately are being dragged in basically this political populism and manipulations, trying to present in a different way the reality which is happening today in Ukraine, and so on and so forth. So I think what it is important is not only fighting the disinformation by being active to expose those who spread it. Of course, authorities have to have powers to stop and to sanction that. That is a delicate issue when we talk about freedom of speech discussion and so on and so forth. But I think society in Moldova, we mobilized a lot. Civil society, mass media. We, from the first days of the war, we started a campaign, a stop war campaign, where we try to share information, to share the all type of disinformation which is spread, to debunk it, to report to the authorities. That is a contribution that we can do. But otherwise, I think what it is the best way to prevent disinformation activities is to have an enhanced communication policy, and I think this is what Moldovan authorities are trying to do. I mean, we had to adapt to Telegram. They opened a Telegram source of information to provide official information to those who use Telegram as well.
It's a disaster.
And we encourage the authorities to be more active in communicating on all the processes, on all issues, on all things, to be proactive. And if reactive, then to be really much, to be in a speedy reaction, because now, of course, we understand that there is a lot of anxiety in Moldova. Many people worry of the fact that the war in Ukraine can escalate to Moldova, and what we have to be aware is that in this environment there's a lot of disinformation, and unfortunately, the sources of those disinformation are very much connected to sources of Kremlin disinformation activities and their proxies, which are active in Moldova as well.
When we talk about propaganda, I believe that it goes far beyond on the information activity, and it is supported by real actions, let's say political, so-called civil actions, some protests. And do you believe that it would be enough to consider resolving of this problem just in the informational framework, informational understanding through the terms of this information? But how? Because I'm asking not because of some initiatives in Moldova rising recently. When we discuss this issue in Ukraine, we have the same point A and point B. We start from the disinformation, and we end this discussion ends about the disinformation. But propaganda is farther and wider activity rather than just information one.
Yes. I mean,
how can we protect ourselves in this new reality?
Well, we have to look into not only in the information as such, but into the sources of that information and the vehicles of those informations. And we know that in Moldova, we had quite serious issues with the illegal financing of parties. We had the Bahama case, we had the bag case, and we understand that some political forces in this country have been exposed for being supported financially by Russia, directly or indirectly, through oligarchs, through banks, through offshore jurisdictions, but very much supporting them. And for that, I think we need to have a more transparent, more strict legislation in terms of in terms of preventing illegal financing, but also measures to sanction, strong sanctioning for these type of activities, because political parties are the proxies which are used for that. One of for example, Mr. Dodon, who was our former president and leader of socialists, he is anymore not the leader of the socialists, but he is a chairman of a business association of Moldova and Russia.
Yeah, but practically he remains to be.
Of course, he's an informal leader of the socialists, and at the same time, he has been creative how to legalize, in a way, the financing of the activities that they conduct there through business associations now. And looking into transparency of funding of activities is also important. In 2020, Moldova Parliament has adopted a law on desoffshorization to make the transparency in the public contracts and everything else. I think deoffshorization is very much relevant to the activity of the businesses operating here in Moldova, including associations, and so on and so forth. I think and enforcement. I think the most effective way to prevent is enforcement. A week ago, the parliament has banned the war symbols in Moldova. Now it's a law, and the authorities have to enforce the law.
So follow the money every time works.
Follow the money and apply the law.
Yeah.
And I think, what we had here in Moldova, and I think in Ukraine as well, in other countries of our region, the element of impunity is a serious issue. And I think what it is important to deter and to prevent any malign activities, illegal activities of various sectors, is that they need to be aware that if they involve in these activities, the imminent sanction will come, and nothing will help them to cover, because what we see now, we have corrupt elites doing business while being in office, leaving the office, creating parties as a shadow. Then now leaving the country. Then we have all the kleptocrats now left the country, and they're being hiding somewhere in the world. And when we ask them to, well, because they have filed criminal cases on them, when you ask them to be extradited to Moldova, the Interpol says that we cannot extradite because of the Article 3, because he's a politician. So, I mean, these kleptocrats are inventive to abuse the law, creative. And what is important is that the authorities are resilient and strong enough to be more effective, more efficient, to fight for that and to deter and to sanction. And that is even more important when you have kleptocrats influenced by malign influence from other actors.
You know, everything what you have been saying is true also for Ukraine. And I would say most of weaknesses are the same for both countries. And do you believe that Russia has the same plan for Moldova, like in Ukraine? I mean, I refer not only to military threats, but in political invasion, in political capturing of the system. Do you believe that they don't consider any local, differences? Because as a result, we have the same problems, the same corrupted elites established by pro-Russian authorities, like we have such parties, Moldova has such parties, and they are connected with the same people. And what can you say of the development of their plans?
We need to have strong institutions. We need to have resilient institutions. We need to have effective institutions that can apply the law. And that is, I think, it's important. Our countries are being affected by systemic corruption, by kleptocrats and oligarchs who have vulnerabilized our systems, security system, defense system, institutions, vulnerabilizing our country against hybrid aggressions in which we are today. Moldova has been attacked in 1992. Part of our territory is illegally occupied. And since 1992, I think we had to do much more to increase our resilience. And I think what Ukraine did after 2014, I think that's exactly what Ukraine did. Ukraine has became much resilient. And that, I think, impacted a lot the plans of Russia, the plans of Putin, the plans of Kremlin. And I think now, well, I don't know what plans are there, especially in the minds of those who undermining not only international law but conduct atrocities in Ukraine today. But what I'm sure is that Moldova is not alone. I think now what it is important is to learn lessons from Ukraine and to make sure that all of our partners not only send signals, but do actions to raise costs, further costs on Russia to stop the war in Ukraine and to deter and to discourage any potential escalation. So the focus now should be not on escalation, but really on stopping the aggression on Ukraine. And for us, I think the plan is clear. Even though we're a neutral country, neutrality works at peace, not at war. it doesn't provide you security guarantees, unfortunately, now, especially from an aggressor that undermines international law, like we've seen in Ukraine, because Ukraine also technically was a neutral country, a non-allied country.
Yeah.
So I think neutrality, I think it's an important tool, but we all understand and realize that the aggression on Ukraine imposes a serious reflection about the new setup of security in Europe, about guarantees which would go beyond NATO, guarantees of security. And at the same time, I think what it is important for Moldova in the medium to long run is to focus more on strengthening our resilience of our institutions, in particular, or as well as when we look at defense and security, cybersecurity as well, and hard and soft security measures. And I think for a small country like Moldova, I think that is something that can be achieved with the support of our partners.
Okay, and finishing our discussion, your prediction. I like this question. This is my favorite. 3 short scenarios of the further evaluation of the situation in region. 3 points, please.
I'm a person that I'm avoiding speculations.
It's not speculation, it's like analytical prognosis.
Then, if you want, invite next time. We have a lot of scenarists here in the country. One of them was Don.
No, thanks.
If you want to invite him, he will tell you about scenarios. He has 1, 2, 3 scenarios. He has fellows here in Moldova, also good scenarists. So I would not go into speculations. What I'm sure is that Ukraine already won this war of Russia. I think, and I'm confident that Ukraine will resist. I'm confident that Ukraine will win. And what I hope at the same time is that this war on Ukraine will continue to give more thoughts to the international community, to the international world, to civilized world. That approach being afraid of Russia is not a strategy. Being afraid of anyone is not a strategy. What I think is important is to support partners, is to build up partnerships, credible partnerships. And I think today Ukraine has a lot of things to share with all over the world. And I think what I hope in this regard is, especially as we are here on the European continent, is that we could get more and more clear signals from our partners in the European Union that we belong to Europe, not just in terms of aspirations, but in terms of facts. And I think it's the right moment, the right time to send a clear signal to Ukrainian people, the army, that they belong to European Union. And I think that is important. Moldova, of course, also is a European country, and we also advance on our way to the European Union. We also need clear messages in that sense. Because I'm not sure anyone wants debates and speculations and provocations about geopolitical choices in this country to trigger provocations and destabilizations and would bring, I don't know, even more complicated environment. I really want that we have debates in our countries about the best solutions that we can transform our countries, reform our countries, and push our countries towards civilized world, toward the European Union. I would like to see opposition which would have better ideas how to advance the country towards transformation, towards fighting corruption, towards strengthening the rule of law, and advancing our country on the European way. And I don't like the fact that we have to see the opposition basically speculating a lot, without proposing any solutions, and trying to take the stance of a Strauss, especially in the positions in current situations that we see in the region. So yeah, if that would happen, I think that is already a good scenario for us, for all of us.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Thank you very much, friends, everyone who who has been with us during our discussion. I welcome you to our next conversations. And dear Mr. Groza, thank you for this insightful discussion, conversation, interview. Hope to see you next time, and all the best to Moldova and to